Hello and welcome to Long Story Short. I'm Kijan Haynes. Our borders, like the bookstore from the 90s, they seem to be closed forever. Or are they? See, there's a really famous movie quote.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Look, the closest we've heard anything about a possible date for reopening is a leaked minute from the Caribbean Airlines meeting, which says, not until next year. And we get why the borders are closed. Let's face it, people are gross now. The US especially is a cesspool of the coronavirus. So it's understandable that we don't want people traipsing in and out with their germs. But when the borders were first closed, we were mostly COVID-free. But now, we are the cesspool of the Caribbean.
The lessons from Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, Trinidad and Tobago, and indeed everywhere, particularly in Europe, is that we should never become complacent in our efforts to contain the COVID-19 disease. The best way to do so is to comply with the health protocols. Trinidad and Tobago has determined that in light of COVID-19, its world-famous carnival will no longer be held in February 2021.
Yeah, thanks for rubbing it in. So I say, look, just bring them home so we can get on with it, if at the very least, so we can stop hearing the whining. It's been months. So much so repatriation played a major part of the election campaign.
You cannot abandon over 10,000 citizens of your country. You cannot do that. That is worse than, I think, slavery and indentureship, to just give up 10,000 of our people, man. Mr. Rowley, there are COVID protocols, health protocols. You do not have to be a rocket scientist, or certainly you're not. Maybe a rock scientist, but certainly not a rocket scientist.
Okay, rock scientist is actually quality raps. But that message backfired because of the slavery allegory, and rightly so. But to this day, how you feel about repatriation, like so much in this day and age, aligns with your political views. Now, if you lean to the government, you're like, okay, right, I get what they're doing. But if you support the opposition, then this is the most wicked Rowley regime. In early September, the National Security Minister said they were loosening regulations to get back into the country. And a big part of the reason was that we were now allowing people to quarantine at home, so we wouldn't be flooding the healthcare system. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister once again had to defend the slow pace of repatriation.
Security is managing a whole plethora of requests, and I monitor it, and I'm satisfied that the decisions are made in the most reasonable way, and where there are urgencies, the ministry would intervene. The biggest problem is that we don't have scheduled flights. Because we don't have scheduled flights, it complicates the repatriation process.
Now, having no flights is a valid excuse until you play back what Stuart Young said when he first announced the loosened measures.
Now with this liberalized exemption policy, I expect the process to pick up a lot quicker, and we are going to do the best, working with the Ministry of Health, to turn around those facilities. I'm also going to be speaking to Caribbean Airlines to try and put on some flights to destinations where we'll be able to get persons back as quickly as possible.
So, I mean, this is where we have to ask, like, what was going on with Cal? Like, why don't we just send out some planes before they send workers home? The Prime Minister is also announcing plans to get us into the CARICOM bubble, but we need to get 20 cases per day. Right now, we're at 50-ish.
CARICOM is still operating in some semblance of a sharing of space, but the challenges have not gone away. Some new challenges have occurred within the bubble. The intention was that we'd all try to be at the same level of infection and control, so our populations would not be at any additional risk by mixing. Challenges very much like ours. So we have not yet all come down to the designated number of 20 per day. That is still a little way off.
Right, well, there goes that. One of the most annoying things I've seen is people who would send me a newspaper story about someone stranded abroad and say, see, the media are not covering this. Are you kidding me? The Express has been determined to interview every single local stranded abroad, all 10,000 of them. And to those who say, well, the media keep asking the same questions over and over, well, sometimes we have to. Take this question sent in to the Ministry of Health briefing by Kim Boudram from The Express.
And this goes to CMO. There are many persons who are facing their first winter abroad, nationals who are waiting to come back home, and they're quite anxious. Okay. They're older or may have health issues. Has the ministry received any such concern, and is there any recommendation to increase repatriation for such categories of persons in the coming months?
Yeah, we've run out of ways to ask the question. So now we're coming up with new ways like, hey, they only packed a summer wardrobe. What's the girl to do? Dr. Parasaram referred that question to the Ministry of National Security. We know these things are not falling on deaf ears. And the Prime Minister has said that running to the media will not make any difference. Remember, this is the man who hasn't even granted his daughter an exemption to return. And remember when he spoke about blanking his own friend?
You know, the other day a friend of mine was outside when this border closed down. Of course, you know, trying to be he partner is Prime Minister, so he wanted to come home, call me. His problem is that he don't have no passport. So what your story is? Well, you know, I have an American passport, but my Trinidad passport expired. I say, stay there.
And Stuart Young has said going to court isn't going to help your chances either.
Taking us to court, the pre-action protocols, those matters are being defeated time and time again because the court recognizes that we have a proper criteria being applied, and we will continue to apply that. And we are moving into another phase of speeding that up.
And the thing is, we know what does. The government has been pretty open about some of the aspects.
Seeing the figures of applications go up, it is obvious that there are persons who were living abroad, who are Trinidadians, who were living abroad, and now have taken personal decisions that they want to return home. They are not going to be the priority. Our priority is getting back our nationals who were stuck abroad, who had gone abroad before March when we closed our borders.
And thanks to Freedom of Information requester extraordinaire Devant Mirage, we know too that it helps if you have kids, have a serious medical condition, but if you can shelter in place at a friend's or a relative, you're kind of in the back of the pack. But you know what they say about fish and house guests? After 3 days, they stink. So we spoke to 2 citizens stranded abroad, and they have 2 experiences on either side of the priority divide.
My name is Carol Niels. I'm currently an undergrad student stuck in Guadeloupe, stranded in Guadeloupe. I did reach out to the media to try to bring more awareness to my story. However, I'm still not exempted. I'm still in Guadeloupe. I'm still trying to reach Tripim. The process is frustrating. You wake up with hope, and sometimes you go to sleep with distress because you need to wake up the next day and you need to try again. It's so frustrating. You know, just put yourself in our shoes and really try to understand how it feels like to be away from home with no family, no income, and just no hope.
Hi guys, so my name is Doris. I am in Quito, Ecuador, where I've been practicing journalism for over a year. Initially, this journey was supposed to be a limited one. I was scheduled to return to Trinidad on March 21st, but 3 days before my flight, I got an email from Copa Airlines informing me that my flight had been cancelled because the airports in Ecuador as well as Panama had closed. Now it's been quite some time. Trinidad and Tobago has closed its borders, and then now there's no telling when people like myself trapped abroad can return home. And so, like many other people, I wait with bated breath. I am amongst probably one of the few lucky ones who was able to retain her job and still be able to be employed. For others who may not be so lucky, I'm pretty sure the situation is even more stressful. And so we wait to see what is going to happen with the borders.
Now, here's the kicker. Remember that failure to communicate? What we've shown is that people are really good about being vocal once they're out of the country, but they're quiet like mice once they've gotten home. People are coming home every week. In doing this story, I reached out to a few people who had previously kicked up a fuss to follow up on their situation, and they'd been home for a month. So the problem falls in 3 places. The media, for not updating us on changes to the stories. The government, for not updating us on changes to their stories. And the citizens who are now home, for not updating us on changes to their stories. At least a thank you. So the most recent numbers from August 31st to August 6th, 1,952 exemptions granted to come home, 5,284 since it all began. We now have 400 to 450 rooms for state-supervised quarantine when everybody comes in. And now there's a rotation of flights happening every day, every 10 days from New York to Miami, some from Barbados, Jamaica, and now Toronto. Progress, finally. Young says he also has the list of when people applied to return home, which might help. But get this. We are a nation of scams. What? People are scamming nationals saying, well, pay me and I'll get your name higher up on the exemption list.
That there are some mischief makers out there, and anyone who is telling persons that they have a way to facilitate a quicker grant of exemptions at the Ministry of National Security, that is simply not so.
Look, I really do hope we can just get everybody home, and to those running the scam, maybe we can consider the process of exile.